How does someone show that they won? With a medal, with a trophy, with a dance? But what can a trophy be? Flowers? A crown? A flower crown? For the ancient Greeks and Romans, the symbol of victory was often the laurel crown, and it continues to mean this to the modern day. It shows up in statues and mosaics and paintings of war victors, emperors, gods, and goddesses, those with the most power. It was a way to attract the gods' attention, to bless and legitimize a leader's power. But where did it start? In myth? In real life? How has it evolved to the place it is in today, where it is still a main symbol of the Olympic Games? Does it matter what it meant? Does its disturbing mythological connotations hurt the purpose it holds now? Is it disturbing at all? Or should we accept that the orators and writers had their agendas, and so the more troubling aspects had their audience in a particular time and place, and we can see the wreath crown for what it is? Yeah, I think we can see the merit in that. But maybe bringing the issues to light means that we can continue to evolve our perceptions now. The laurel crown, which represents victory and glory in ancient Greek and Roman cultures, has a long history associated with mythology and real-life achievements, such as its origins in ancient Greece, where it was used to crown triumphant athletes during the Olympic and Pythian Games, honoring their athletic achievements. Beyond its relationship with athletic skill, the laurel crown held symbolic significance in ancient Rome, where it was presented as a mark of honor for military commanders, emperors, and scholars for their accomplishments and services to society. In Roman culture, the laurel crown symbolizes wisdom, accomplishment, and immortality, as well as the concept of eternal glory for those who are judged to be deserving. In Greek mythology, the laurel, which began as a sacred plant associated with the god Apollo, god of music, poetry, and sunlight, rose into prominence as a symbol of respect, power, and divine favor. Its use as a crown for war victors, monarchs, and deities was later intended to invoke divine benefits and legitimize the power of kings and emperors. My name is Renee Whitehouse. Welcome to the 11th episode of Detours in Our Theology. Let's get to the roots of the laurel crown. The laurel crown evolved into a revered emblem of success that outlasted its legendary origins. Its continued employment in a variety of art forms, including the sculptures, mosaics, and paintings, heightened its association with greatness. And this symbolism persisted through history, culminating in a prominent role as the symbol of achievement in even modern contexts such as the Olympic Games. While the laurel crown retains elements of its complex mythological history, such as its association with Apollo's doomed and troubled love for Daphne, its modern interpretation is always based on its image of victory and glory. Recognizing the laurel crown's historically diverse meanings allows us to comprehend its historical worth, while also acknowledging its roots as a symbol of victory, even if we disagree. The use of the laurel or bay tree, Laurus nobilis, has a long history dating back to ancient times. In Roman culture, it symbolized glory and knowledge, and was used to crown both poets and heroes. The name Daphne means laurel, as suggested by Dutch linguist R.S.P. Beeks. The name Daphne in Greek means the laurel tree. While the story of Daphne is traditionally connected with the bay laurel, the Laurus nobilis, almost 90 species of evergreen shrubs, noted for their scented flowers and poisonous berries, are grouped under the genus Daphne. Then, in the Bible, the name Daphne is said to mean victory. And this just causes the question to come up. Which came first? The name in the myth or the name of the plant? But as it seems that they are derived from one another, we are looking at a chicken and the chicken egg situation. Are bay leaves, though, are they medicinal or maybe a psychoactive drug? Why were these leaves so important? The olive tree and the bay laurel have both played significant roles in ancient cultures, particularly in the Mediterranean region. Bay leaves are commonly used in culinary practices across different cultures such as Turkish, Indian, Italian, and French cuisine. While the olive tree held emblematic status in the Levant and in Athens, continuing through biblical times, the bay laurel gained further prominence in Roman culture as the symbol of glory and knowledge, after being known for the exact same thing in ancient Greece. Evidence from the early Neolithic site of La Draga in Spain to a calibrated date of between 5300 to 4700 BCE suggests an intentional selection and management of laurel trees, indicating its importance even in prehistoric times. The tree's leaves, rich in monoterpenes and sesquiterpenes, have been used for flavoring food, as in bay leaves, and in potential pharmaceutical application. This long history of use highlights the cultural and practical significance of the laurel tree across different civilizations and time periods. The tree native to the Mediterranean. The tree native to the Mediterranean has spread to various parts of the world. Even in ancient times, this included the Middle East, where certain trees, including the laurel, were considered sacred. Another sacred tree, called the persate or Balanites aegyptica, also called the beto tree, is native to the Near East and Africa and is a wild laurel tree growing in the dry regions of Persia in Egypt. It was sacred to the ancient Egyptians and revered as a symbol of everlasting fame. Thoth and Suffolk, both god and goddess respectively of writing, science, arts, numbers, learning, and knowledge, inscribed the names and deeds of kings, heroes, and high priests on the leaves of this laurel, thus securing them and their names eternal life, writing on the symbolic pages of the Book of History. According to academics, Muslims associated and could still associate sacred trees with righteous figures' souls, while the Druze connect them to events in the lives of prophets and religious leaders. This cultural and religious significance has likely contributed to the ongoing use and cultivation of laurel trees in the Middle East. Today, the bay laurel continues to be widely cultivated, mainly for culinary purposes. But in addition to culinary applications, bay leaves and their oil are still used in traditional and folk medicines in the region to treat respiratory disorders, gastrointestinal discomfort, and other ailments and infections. Laurel is an antioxidant, analgesic, anti-epileptic, anti-inflammatory, anticonvulsant natural remedy. Laurel oil was used extensively in medicine, as well as a treatment against head lice. Even heads of falcons are said to have been rubbed with it, though I could only find this in one paper. But not just medicinal. The laurel berries and chewing the leaves were said to have psychiatric effects, and according to legend, the oracles at Delphi would chew them before they got their prophecies. According to Pliny the Elder, the laurel brought peace, like the olive branch, and is thought to be the sign of cessation of hostilities, as well as victory, fidelity, and strength. Of course, Pliny the Elder, who lived in the 1st century BCE, was writing hundreds of years after the first Olympics, which was started in 776 BCE. And he is likely one of the influence as to why the olive branches came to have the same meaning as the laurel, or vice versa. The Olympics were originally held as ceremonial and ritualistic feats of heroics to honor Zeus, the head of the gods. They got their name from where it was held in the olive tree groves of Olympia around the base of Mount Olympus, which was the home of the gods, by the city-state of Elis in the northwest Peloponnese. Victors were said to receive an olive wreath or an olive branch as their prize, symbolizing the highest honor. However, the reality of ancient sport prizes was much more complex. Many competitors were offered valuable objects or a sort of cash with these prizes, serving as both economical and symbolic functions, and strengthening the networks in the ancient Greek world. In any case, the Pythian Games, founded sometime in the 6th century BCE, so about a century later, were held every 4 years in Delphi in honor of Apollo. For that prize, a wreath of laurel gathered from the Vale of Tempe in Thessaly was given as a prize. Hence, it later became customary to award prizes in the form of laurel wreaths to victorious generals, athletes, poets, and musicians, and was worn as a caplet on the head. While the Olympic Games originally used an olive wreath, kotinos, as the victor's crown for Zeus, and the laurel wreath was associated with the Pythian Games head Apollo, both of these wreaths symbolize excellence, immortal fame, and victory, and the laurel was specifically to be associated with Apollo's victory and glory after capturing Daphne and then defeating the Python, and represented the transformation of violence into cultural capital. This myth, even existing, solidified the laurel's connection to Apollo, and by extension, its use as a symbol of victory and prestige. In Athens, victors of theatrical contests were officially crowned in the theater, followed by unofficial rituals such as being carried on friends' shoulders, periegamos, showered with flowers, philoboia, and adorned with ribbons, temniostis. These crowning rituals symbolize the recipient's readiness to transcend the mundane and enter a morally and spiritually superior realm. Other than in military victories, the laurel crown was used to crown poets and heroes, representing knowledge and achievement. The laurel continued to play a significant role in Roman imperial iconography, particularly during Augustus's reign, where it was used alongside other symbols to legitimize his rule and transform his military might into socio-political authority and civic virtue, which he did by invoking the ancient legends of Apollo. In Rome, the corona triumphalis, or the triumphant crown, held sacred significance, serving both purifying and protective functions for military triumphs for the general, his army, and his family, and was one of the highest military honors. Interestingly, Macedonian kings adopted the olive or oleaster wreath of Zeus Olympios of Elis on their coinage, despite traditionally using oak wreaths as symbols of kingship. The use of plant motifs in ancient Greek poetry further emphasized the importance of these wreaths in celebrating academic achievements and immortalizing the victor's fame. These motifs have endured through the centuries with the symbolism of plants in antiquity deeply rooted in myths, representing timeless cultural values and ideals, with these symbolic plants native to the Mediterranean region exhibiting convergent functional characteristics. As mentioned before, the practice extended beyond military context to include athletic, musical, and dramatic competitions. The symbolic importance of the laurel persisted throughout Roman history and continues to be recognized today. Some artists and poets, like John Lafarge and Roman writers Virgil and Ovid, explored deeper, more enigmatic meanings of wreaths in their works, often connecting them to themes of love, death, and the ethical implications of victory. The laurel, a symbol of victory, loyalty, and dedication, is often associated with specific deities or heroes through its representation, which may be similar to that of myrtle and olive when on Greek vases. Wreaths, created by braiding flowers, leaves, or branches, symbolize eternity, completeness, perfection, wholeness, time, and sky. The circle is a universal symbol of unity, wholeness, spirit, various goddesses, and female power. It can represent the Mother Earth, Mother Nature, and the sacred space. It is a similar meaning to that of the umbrios, the serpent eating its own tail, as an ancient symbol of eternity. The tradition of wreath making can also be traced back to the ancient Persians, who used circular diadems to express the kingdom's importance and honor. Wreaths have been used in various applications, including wedding ceremonies, festivals, dances, rituals, and funerals. Crowns on rulers' heads demonstrated sovereignty and signified their profession, rank, status, and achievements. Wreaths have also served meditating roles, helping bearers connect with specific gods. Plants braided into wreaths could be dedicated to various deities, the oak or olive to Zeus, the laurel to Apollo, herbs to Circes, vine to Dionysus, and myrtle to Venus. Priests wore wreaths on their head or around their neck to signify important dates and celebrate religious festivals. Wreaths had a dual role, spreading spirituous sense, cooling, causing stupor, acting as an analgesic, and trilling. They were also used during the deceased sending off to attract divine protection or to honor the departed. But aside from circular wreaths, this phrase also refers to garlands and festoons. Corona longa was used to embellish tombs, circular seats, triumphal chariots, and building interiors. As an aside, sella cororis, or the cororis seats, or coriol seat, is a seat with curved legs forming a wide X, and during the ancient Roman period, it represented a symbol of power. One of the most popular types of wreaths was and is the laurel. Romans took it over from the Greek tradition as a symbol of peace, eternity, victory, unrequited love, and the supreme ruler. As we discussed before, the highest medal that you could get was called the Corona Triumphalis. This was granted by the Senate to victors coming back from wars. According to Pliny, this could only be granted by the Senate to victors coming back from wars. As an integral part of the composition of triumph, the laurel was an element always present in the hands of the goddess Victoria, often shown at the moment of crowning gods or emperors. This kind of glorification became a model, not only for the combination of the wreath together with a few generally accepted symbols of power, but the implied idea of terrestrial and celestial power. Once adopted as the main pivot of triumph, the laurel wreath's meaning was transmitted to different areas of human activity, such as art and even death, where the most important thing was the victory over it. Ancient sources mention laurel as an outstanding attribute of dignity, with two main types, from the Delphi and the cypress. The Delphi laurel was green with larger reddish-green fruit, while the cypress laurel consisted of short black wrinkled leaves that curved upward. Sources also mention a very leafy Pelasgian laurel belonging to the Daphnoides, of which the crown of Alexander the Great was made. Though Pliny the Elder wrote about different sorts of laurels, the laurel dedicated to Daphne was the big tree with large leaves and berries. Someone who was crowned with such a wreath was named Daphanphoros. There is a story in which laurel bushes were planted by a man to protect houses from thunderstorms. After hearing this, Emperor Tiberius wore a laurel wreath during a storm to get protection from lightning and thunder, according to Pliny. A well-known depiction of this emperor from the monument in the Kelfgenbos Museum in Nijmegen, Holland, celebrates the emperor's victories in the Germanic Wars, where he is represented with a laurel wreath on his head at the moment when the goddess Victory crowns him. Laurel wreaths represented the medium through which divine power is transferred. They grew inside the Delphi shrine, supplied clergy with the chewing leaves before prophecy, and were used for cleaning sacred places. Laurel branches were held by priests during prayers and parades, and used to decorate houses and portals. Laurel wreaths were granted to the winners of the Pythian Games, as stated, but also given to poets and physicians specifically, because it was thought that the laurel was the most salutary plant. In a wall painting scene from 75 CE in Herculaneum in 75 CE, Chiron is teaching the young Achilles, wherein, as a very wise academic and teacher, Chiron is wearing a laurel wreath on his head. And even through Christianity, coins featuring the emperors adorned with laurel wreaths appeared in Rome, from the Octavian Augustus coinage to the first Christian emperor Constantine the Great, even during Emperor Justinian's Christian-defined rule. Victoria, or the goddess Victory, was depicted as a laurel wreath bearer. Victoria was now converted into an angel who continued to act as a mediator in the coronation of monarchs with God-given power, beginning with Constantine. Gracchinica painters would continue this tradition by painting two angels placing the laurel crowns on the heads of Serbian medieval Queen Simoninda and King Milutin. In Christian art, a laurel wreath represents the triumphs of the deceased over death and resurrection, so it was worn by Jesus after he died and removed the crown of thorns. In the light of imperial ideology, Napoleon also wore the wreath on his head, as Roman emperors did. In modern art, the laurel wreath symbolizes peace and victory, and therefore monuments dedicated to the victims of World War I are marked with the laurel wreath. You can see an angel holding a laurel crown, symbolizing the triumph and honor. Oftentimes, you can also see the laurels as part of a crown worn by a skull. This skull is an allegory for the nature of life, representing memento mori, which means remember you are going to die. While the skull is also associated with melancholy, when wearing it with a laurel wreath, it conveys that virtue and fame will outlive death. The poet laureate is a well-known example of a prize winner dating from the early Renaissance in Italy, so more modern than ancient Rome. Poet laureate, or in plural, poets laureate, is a poet officially appointed by a government or conferring institution, typically expected to compose poems for special events and occasions. The practice of crowning poets was revived from ancient Greece in Padua for Albertino Masato, followed by Franciscus Petrarca's crowning ceremony in the audience hall of the medieval senatorial palazzo on the Capitolio, the Capitolium or Capitoline Hill, respectively in 1315 and 1342. Because the Renaissance figures who were attempting to revive the classical tradition lacked detailed knowledge of the Roman president they were attempting to emulate, these ceremonies took on more of a character of doctoral candidates. Since the office of poet laureate has become widely adopted, the term laureate has come to signify recognition for preeminence or superlative achievements, as in a Nobel laureate. A royal decree in rhetoric, poet laureate, was awarded at European universities in the Middle Ages. The term, therefore, may refer to a holder of such a degree, which recognized skill in rhetoric, grammar, and language. Today, there are laureates from all different fields, representing all different countries, genders, sexes, and backgrounds, which could also be where we get the word baccalaureate, though this direct connection is not confirmed by scholars. While researching it, there are so many options for its true etymology that it just doesn't connect. Finally getting to the myth, the laurel wreath held significant symbolic meaning in ancient Greek and Roman cultures. It was primarily associated with Apollo, who used laurel wreaths as a crown after the nymph Daphne was transformed into a laurel tree to escape his pursuit. And most artistic depictions of the myth focus on the moment of Daphne's transformation, not what happened after. But there are two major versions of the myth of Daphne's transformation into a laurel tree to escape Apollo's pursuit, which have remained popular to this day. One, the rewritten version by Ovid in Book 1 of the Metamorphoses in the 8th century CE. This story, along with other tree-related myths, reflects the symbolic connection between humans and trees in various cultures. In Ovid's Metamorphoses, the story of Daphne portrays Apollo's love, Daphne's escape, and her transformation. However, versions of this story existed before Ovid's rendition. Another aside, interestingly, some interpretations suggest a shift in sacred trees in Greek mythology, where the olive tree or Athena replaces the palm tree in Apollo's birth story on Delos, possibly driven by political and economic motives in the ancient Greek world. Contemporary works like Ted Hughes' Tales from Ovid continue to revisit and reinterpret these ancient tales. This tradition of alteration and later revisitation is reflected in the Olympic story, as the laurel wreath or crown is said to be an olive branch instead. And it seems to reflect the more idyllic modern wish for peace, rather than the spirit and need for competition. For more on this, listen to episodes 207 and 208 of the Our Fake History podcast. The first episode of the Olympic trilogy, 207, partially inspired this deep dive. But the tale of Daphne and Apollo, as recounted in Ovid's Metamorphoses, presents a captivating narrative of unrequited love, divine intervention, and ultimate transformation. In this classic form, Daphne the huntress evaded Apollo's lustful advances by transforming into the bay or laurel tree, which thereby acquired her name. It actually begins with a competitive quarrel between the god Eros and his overbearing elder brother Apollo about their respective skills with the bow. Their animosity leads to Eros' revenge. He fires a golden arrow at Apollo, which makes him fall in love with, or rather, fuels his lustful desire for, Daphne. And then he shoots a leaden arrow at Daphne, which has the effect of suppressing sexual desire. The god Eros, who is more the god of erotic love, or sexual love, who is now conflated with Cupid even though they are completely different, Eros' mischievous and vindictive act of shooting Daphne with a leaden arrow so that she would repel Apollo's advances, juxtaposed with the striking of Apollo's heart with the golden arrow, sets the stage for a series of events where free will clashes with predetermined fate, which Ovid is seemingly taking a clear stance on by the end. As a direct result from the arrow, Daphne devotes herself to virginity and hunting, with the reluctant but incredibly quick acquiescence of her father, the river god Peneus. Meanwhile, Apollo falls in love with the nymph Daphne, rushes over and gives a lengthy speech of self-praise, which does not impress Daphne, and instead she runs away, and then he chases her. Unable to outrun him, she prays to her father to transform her to escape Apollo's advances and to destroy the beauty which has brought her such unwelcome attention. Immediately, her father transforms her into a tree just as Apollo catches up with her. Because Apollo cannot possess her sexually, because apparently he has standards, he finds consolation in claiming her as his sacred tree, a status which, weirdly, she appears to accept, at least according to the translations. Before Ovid's retelling, there was an account detailed in Erotica Pathemata 15 by Parthenius. Rather than having a brotherly dispute leading to the god of sexual passion dulling her natural desires, Daphne had already held a steadfast commitment to a life of chastity, and the defiant chase of Apollos showcases her agency and autonomy in the face of unwelcome advances. Her plea to her father to save her from Apollo's grasp culminates in a poignant metamorphosis into the bay tree as a final act of self-preservation, her final act of self-preservation in both versions. The evolution of Daphne into the Laurel tree, who is claimed by Apollo as a symbol of his conquest, serves as a reminder of the enduring power dynamics and imbalances between gods and mortals. Both renditions immortalize Daphne's autonomy and agency through her transformation, elevating her into the timeless emblem of resistance and self-determination in the face of adversity. But that's not really what we are told if she agrees to be his symbol at the end. The Erotica Pathemata, translation by Frederick Williams in 1999, quote, "This is a story about Daphne, daughter of Amyclus. She would never go down into the town, nor even mix with the other girls. Instead, she acquired many dogs and would hunt both in Daphne transformed Laconia and also on occasions going further afield into the other mountainous areas of the Peloponnese, for which reason she was a favorite of Artemis, who gave her the gift of shooting accurately. When Daphne was wandering the hinterland of Ilus, the son of Voenolos, he fell in love with her. He despaired of winning her by any other approach, but dressed in women's clothing and began to hunt with her, disguised as a girl. He became her favorite, and she would not let him go, embracing him and clinging to him at all times. Apollo, who was himself burning with desire for the maid, felt anger and envy towards Leucippus for being with her, and put into her mind the thought of going with all the other girls to a spring and bathing there. When they arrived there, they started to strip. When they saw that Leucippus was reluctant, they tore off his clothes. When they realized how he had deceived them and plotted against them, all of them drove their spears into him. He, by the god's will, disappeared. But when Daphne espied Apollo coming at her, she began to run away for all she was worth. When Apollo pursued her, she prayed to Zeus to be set free from humanity, and people say that she became the tree, which is named Daphne after her. Ovid transformed Parthenius' story of Daphne. They're in different settings in Thessaly, not the Peloponnese. Ovid made her a river god's daughter, not a Laconian city hero. Ovid focuses on Apollo's pursuit of Daphne. There's no mention of Daphne praying to Zeus. And Apollo assigns Daphne a role in Rome's state religion, tying the story to Augustus. Apollo also often grants the gift of prophecy for the distant future onto his female victims, which does not happen in Ovid's version. Ovid's tale of Apollo and Daphne has inspired many imitators in literature, art, and music. A list of these is in the Oxford Guide to Classical Mythology and the Arts by Jane Reed. Or another storyteller, Philocus, like Parthenius' account, says she was the daughter of a Meglas called Daphne, who fled from Apollo when he tried to have intercourse with her, turned into the bay tree, and was honored by the god and received the gift of prophecy. Or, completely different, in Nonnes Dionysiaca says, and the daughter of Ladon, the celebrated river, loathed the business of marriage. A nymph, she became a tree that whispered words with her prophetic berries. Fleeing from Phoebus' bed, she came to crown Phoebus' hair. Phoebus in this is Apollo, because the name Phoebus means sun god, and that her transformation came about after not wanting to marry Apollo after sleeping with him. It also seems like she just became the tree form of herself, as many nymphs are known to do, while still becoming Apollo's crown regardless. And still in another version, Daphne was the Greek nymph and was one of the attendants of Athena, goddess of wisdom, skill, and war. One day she was pursued by Apollo, and in her flight she prayed to the gods that the earth would yawn and swallow her, or else change her form, which caused her to be prey to her pursuer. And her prayers were answered. At the point of being overtaken by Apollo, Athena transformed her into the laurel tree, Daphne Laurella. Because he was already there, Apollo chose the laurel tree as his favorite personal tree. As an evergreen with intoxicating properties, it symbolizes poetic inspiration and immortal fame. It was believed in antiquity that the laurel endowed prophets with visions, and the Pythian priestess at Delphi, the oracle dedicated to Apollo, chewed laurel leaves to induce the oracle power. Reading into it, why did Ovid change the myth? What was he trying to get across? Was it that the gods are dangerous? That Apollo is a creep? Ovid might be saying that it's impossible to circumvent the god's will. In every version, whether explicitly stated or not, Daphne is running from an obsessed stalker. She finds that she can't get away, so she has one last chance to escape, one last opportunity to be free. Which is why it is so demoralizing that her branches and leaves, parts of her, are taken away to serve as a symbol of her attacker. Why would she ever be okay with him using her? Either before or after her transformation. She had no say, especially as a tree. And that's horrifying from a modern perspective, unless we can give her the agency of deciding, I'm going to be remembered as a symbol of my victory. Apollo is just piggybacking, but who knows? So why the laurel? What other symbolic properties and functions does it have? We know it's used for medicine. We know it's used as medicine and commonly used for food, but was the symbol around before the myth? It's pretty much impossible to know for sure, but most importantly, how messed up is it our continuing to use it as a symbol of victory? If anything, we have to acknowledge that the past did happen the way it did. We can't change it. We can't alter the ancient perspectives just to suit our own ends, but we don't have to continue using it this way. Instead, we can use the olive branch We have to know that that may or may not be an original symbol of the Olympics, but truly they have changed so much that I don't think it matters that much anymore. We've heard the phrase, resting on our laurels. It means to be satisfied with your achievements and to not make an effort to do anything else. To not rest on your laurels means that just because you've been successful in the past doesn't mean that you can stop doing what you need to do. The idiom dates back to the ancient Greek and Roman traditions. Today, the laurel crown remains a potent symbol in various forms of art, literature, and popular culture, representing victory, achievement, and distinction. It is often used in academic ceremonies to honor scholars and high achievers, connecting back to its historic roots as a symbol of excellence and recognition. The enduring legacy of the laurel crown serves as a reminder of the timeless appeal of honoring successes and celebrating human accomplishment across diverse realms of society. But that is why we need to take a critical look at the symbolism that we use today. Not because it should never change, but because it will. Of course the meaning of symbols changes, just like technology, language, and culture itself. I'd say only rocks stay the same, but even they, in time, will weather and shift. I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode of Detours in Archaeology, The Roots of the Laurel Crown. The Roots of the Laurel Crown. Whether you've heard my episodes before, or if this one is your first, I truly appreciate your time and interest. I would like to apologize for any names or pronunciations I get wrong. I do make hearty attempts, but of course I make mistakes. I really want to learn, so please, if you have any comments, corrections, any questions, or if you have an idea of something for me to delve into, you can comment directly on whatever podcast app you're listening to. Email me directly at detoursinarchaeology@gmail.com. Or head over to my website at detoursinarchaeology.com and go to the contact page. I'd especially like to thank my Patreon supporters. If you'd like to join them, head over to my channel's page at patreon.com/detoursinarchaeology. You can sign up to be one of my cultural resource technicians, with which you get extra goodies every week, like bloopers, more writing, or photo blogs that are not on my Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram to catch the latest photos at Flying Sepida. Sepida is spelled S-E-P-I-I-D-A. It is the family name for cuttlefish without the E at the end. And don't forget to sign up for email notifications at my website after you read a bunch of different articles. Every Wednesday, I have either an article or one of my personal illustrations posted, which you can get for yourself at the second level on Patreon. Another way, arguably the best way to support the podcast, at least for right now, is to subscribe, rate, and review, as this can help it reach a wider audience and kind of get the word out to the general public, and maybe inspire some new people. All the music used was by Scott Buckley, who you can find at scottbuckley.com.au. Since the Olympic Games are taking place in Paris right now, here is a little fact about the Eiffel Tower. It grows in the summer. The Eiffel Tower can grow up to 15 centimeters or 6 inches taller in the summer due to thermal expansion, which is the particles in the tower's structure vibrating faster and taking up more space. Iron is a really good conductor of heat, allowing it to pass through easily. And the metal at the base of the tower expands, increasing its height. The top of the tower may also tilt away from the sun by about 7 inches. If you know any true fun facts, please share them with me and I'll relay them to everyone who listens, and you'll get your own shout out. I'll see you soon for another detour into archaeology. Thanks again.